Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight we're discussing Kolchak, Season 1, Episode 10 on Xtreme TV. I'm here with RDV, and we're talking about a show from the mid-'70s that we really loved Darren McGavin's performance in. Very memorable. We've had a couple stinkers, but we've had a lot of really decent episodes and some that are very good. But Doctor, I've got to tell you, I don't know what to make of this one, The Energy Eater. I don't have a problem with the concept of what I thought they were implying early on, but what it turned out to be at the end was like a bunch of exploding light bulbs and not very good. What was your initial take?
I enjoyed it. It was not what I expected it to be, considering, but this kind of reminded me back to the other episode with the alien UFO. So I was kind of like, okay, is this be another alien? And it turned out to be, it was actually, they added some Native American god into it.
Yeah, because really, for those that don't know, Kolchak is really the baseline show in the 70s that really set the template for shows that would be popular later on. I mean, you can make an argument that this had to exist so you could have something like a Lost or anything similar to that, the X-Files, and of course Millennium, the spinoff from that, which is much darker and a better show in my opinion, as well as anything really deep and having a Monster of the Week theme to it. So let me ask you this, RDV. To me, it wasn't a bad episode. It was just, the whole idea here is Kolchak is aware of this hospital that's getting like this grand opening. It's supposed to be the best of there in Chicago. There's been some issues with a few people that fell to their deaths, and while he's in there, while they're going over stuff, he's bored out of his mind. But there's some energy issues going on there, power outages, and I will say this: out of all the episodes we've talked about so far with Kolchak, this one has the one where he's able to kind of sneak around and follow people.
Yes.
And it's kind of cool because he's not yelling and screaming. He's being more like a detective rather than just asking good questions. So look, they started off talking about how this whole hospital was going to be something that was going to investigate what it would be like to help humans live longer, sort of stuff. And he talked about older people, and of course we get a brief scene in here where he's talking with his boss, and he's got the older lady in there too that mentions some stuff, and they have like a nice little scene in there. And I thought, there was a big movement, as we talked about in the 70s, not just with Satanism getting popular, the occult in primetime television, as well as UFOs and everything else. One thing that was also starting to get popular too is this almost kind of cyberpunkish transhumanism thing where you can inject people with things and they might learn to live longer and all that. So where that's at now is a little different than where the seeds of that started off. But the idea I thought they were going to explore was that, this hospital is doing weird things to old people to try to make them live really longer. And I thought, that's kind of cool, right? But it turned out really not to be that at all. And that's where I'm saying I feel a little disappointed, because I thought, wow, Kolchak really was on the cutting edge of trying to introduce some of these topics into the mainstream too. So were you offended by I don't even know if we want to call it a monster, but we have to, don't we?
Well, it's a Native American god. It's a bear god, and he's been living there.
Small G.
Yeah.
For those religious people.
And by them breaking the ground and dredging the lake, which basically kept him dormant. Yeah, he's waking up now, and he's like a potential threat. It's like I said, and this show, whenever I watch it, like stuff like this, always reminds me, this would be an awesome Ghostbusters episode because of the paranormal and stuff like this. This would be something they'd be selling. Same with So anyway, so this they broke ground. They disturbed the bear god, and now the bear god is now he's awake. He had been kept dormant. He finds through some of the Native American, this guy named Jim Elkhorn. He was part of the crew that was working on that, and he quit because these people are getting hurt. So he quit and he moved on to a different job. He's actually a shaman, and he's kind of he shrugged off being a shaman because he didn't want to deal with all the hassle. He just wanted to live a normal life. And this guy is a player. I gotta say that
he's a shaman for the modern age. And
yeah.
Speaking of modern age, let me just go ahead and say welcome to the Night Talker. He's joining us too. So now it's a threesome in here, which is what the shaman was getting ready to do when Kolchak butted in. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm okay. I am just handling things on my end, but I am here.
Did the hospital shake and wake you up?
About the night.
I'm glad to see that your plasma cells haven't been congealed into pure energy, sir.
Yep.
Well, you know, that was happening for a little while, but I managed to pull myself together.
So what was your initial quick take on this episode, The Energy Eater for Kolchak?
As far as episodes go, it had some entertaining side characters, mostly. That's the main thing I noticed. As for the monster itself, I feel like it's another week of, okay, this is an episode of Kolchak. You just nod and go along and you enjoy it. But it wasn't one that bothered me.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to say it.
I think Kolchak really kind of upped his game, though, not just with the sneaking around we were talking about, but also the fact that when he's sneaking around to the employees only section, he follows this really attractive nurse Eisen. And if you say it slowly, which is the way I heard it when I saw it, it's Nurse Eyes On, because all eyes should be on this nurse, because wow, Kolchak definitely has the ladies looking lovely in the 70s here in these episodes. And this is a lady that's been around a lot in a lot of B-rolls. But ultimately, he sees her a couple times, and she's the one that actually, like in several other episodes, gives him some key information to what she suspects what's going on. And he plays to her nature about basically saying, hey, you know, I'll listen to a crazy idea about what you think's going on. You want to hear mine? And that was enough to break the seal on her to basically talk about how there was issues with some of the stuff. And we saw the x-rays kind of go nuts. Well, not just the bottom level, but a level below that where the foundation is going bad. And what was neat here is that Kolchak actually took this guy when he wasn't busy wooing women down, and he said, yeah, there's a lot of problems here, Kolchak. This is what I would do. And what was neat about that was that it's so hard to believe in an invisible Native American spirit that's shaking the foundations of building in Midtown Chicago. I mean, right there on Lakeshore Drive or wherever. But what was neat about it was that he was talking about, well, these are things that could go wrong with it. First, I would look for a foundation. I would look for a geothermal crack. I would look for this or that. I would look to see if somebody screwed up. And in that brief moment we're having a conversation, it's like, okay, it's not Kolchak taking a dagger and stabbing it through a vampire's heart or something like that we go, all right. It's kind of really what would be like in the real world. Things that can go wrong have to be eliminated first. And that's one of the things about Kolchak in the modern age that was interesting, is that he had to deal most of the time with those factors because people aren't going to believe those other things. And I think that's just overall generally smart writing for anybody that watches Kolchak too. But for me, I think the scene of the show is when he goes up to see the Playboy shaman who's trying to fix the toaster of the lady next door, this blonde he's making a vodka on the rocks for. And then Kolchak shows up with Nurse Eyes On, and they all start talking, and the blonde sort of, gets ignored. And it finds out the guy has an MBA, but he says, oh, no. I wanted to do construction. I got to be an MBA because if you think about it, it's like $40,000 a year versus that, and it's like, this guy's sharp. He's just not a piece of meat. I thought he was underappreciated side figure in one of these shows. What'd you guys think?
I liked his character. I said I like Jim Milcohorn, the guy, the shaman, construction worker. I thought it was very interesting in the fact that he was really willing to help out Kolchak, and yeah, we got the two doctors who were just like, well, they're not going to admit that they're wrong because, well, they'll lose money. They'll lose, there'll be a mockery, they just do this. And I thought that I'm this really speaks to like real life. I'm just saying that all doctors and all are corrupt, but I'm just saying there are people who will invest in stuff. If something goes wrong, they'll try to sweep under the rug because the whole thing is they sunk all their money into this, and they'll do whatever they can to keep it hush hush. I did, like I said, I like the fact that Jim and him were working together, and I loved it when they started taking the photos and they put them together and they taped together. He's like, "What am I looking at? One big giant eyeball." I was like, man, if that's the size of his eye, can imagine how big it would be if they actually showed the actual thing. Especially if it's a bear or a human, I'm not sure, but
yeah.
But I mean, I did like that, putting pieces together and stuff, taping it, and he's holding it up, and I believe Vincenzo walked in too. And I was like, what the heck's going on? This big mess on the ground. He's like, I'm busy working, go away. But yeah, didn't really feel like a monster of the week to me. It's like, it's
Yeah.
I've taken that pretty much. A lot of the episodes are the same. I enjoy them all. I don't hate one more than the other.
Right.
Especially when I was watching a lot of these when I was sick back in November. So I had the flu when I was watching these going on, and I'm maybe because I was high as a kite, maybe, and self-medicating from all the flu stuff. But I enjoyed this. Yeah, like I said, they see, this being a kid, I probably wouldn't like this much because it wasn't exciting. It's not much action or excitement.
Nothing to say.
Just to me, I feel like back in the day when I first tried to watch Columbo, I didn't really like it. Now that I'm older, I like it.
Yep.
I appreciate it more because now I understand more things. I've got more knowledge of what happens in the world and all that stuff. And this keeps you just enough to feel like you're like a kid again, watching something like this, and it's a fine line between a kid and adult show. And it does it awesome. I didn't see any problem with this whatsoever. In fact, I enjoyed it towards the end. He's going there. He's like, I'm doing this drama dance get cracked. He's like, you know what? Screw this. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
so I enjoyed it. I thought I'd give this a 4 out of 5 though. But just the fact that I would have loved to have a little more action.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think a little more action could have possibly helped it along in a way, but it was still enjoyable to watch. And Rob is absolutely right about the guest stars this week being lovely.
Ooh, Elaine Giftos. Giftas. I don't know how you sell it or say it, but hot.
Yeah, so we're halfway through season 1 of Kolchak, the only season that was playing, and we're talking about a show that's about 45 plus years old. So it is interesting going back and watching it. And while we're not necessarily doing a deep dive scene by scene, which we have done before on some other things here on the Xtreme Movie Show, the one definite theme to Kolchak that I can say is I think we've all pretty much discovered what it's going to be, and that it's not going to be really too much of a variance from that template, the way it goes, whether we call it Monster of the Week, whether it's super low budget, like here, the effects of this spiritual bull running around, or a couple of 60-watt light bulbs, exploding, and some lines painted on the ground that look like cracks, in the foundation. That being said, it still works. It's still effective. It's one of those situations where you go, I don't know if the budget was a lot or a little, but it looks like it was a shoestring one, but it felt real. It didn't break it's not like you saw like a lot of boom mics hanging around. You went, man, come on. I can't believe what's going on here. And again, and I get tired of saying it because it's just so redundant, but the fact that it relies on the performance of Darren McGavin is incredible. I just recently tried rewatching the movie that had Joe Piscopo and Treat Williams in it, about a guy that ends up dying. And it's supposed to be like a buddy cop kind of comedy thing, and he turns into a zombie and only has like 12 hours to live, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And it's a horrible film. I love Joe Piscopo. He was one of the almost original guys on Saturday Night Live back in the 70s and 80s. Extremely funny guy. I love Treat Williams. He's a fantastic actor. He's incredible in this. But I really popped watching this movie going, man, this is really awful, because here comes Darren McGavin coming in, and I'm like, oh, I bet he's going to be the bad guy because he's like the senior scientist in this episode. And sure enough, he's just a little snarky. And all these little Kolchak-isms, just the way he would squint his eyes, or the way he'd be like, well, and he would just have those kind of little speaking mannerisms show up in this movie. It's like, wow, Darren McGavin, just totally underrated when it comes to this particular show, and just how far he cares. And that's why people talk about it to this day that are really interested in the themes that we're talking about with Kolchak. Final thoughts, RDV?
Final thoughts. There's 2 things I want to point out before we leave. Just real quick. There's when Kolchak's assembling the X-rays, and he finds out one doesn't belong. He's like, and then he's like, that's a vertebrae. What is that doing here? He's like, the other thing was that when they actually a little trivia, when Kolchak and Jim Alcorn were actually researching Matsumoto, they were actually reading diaries and logs of pioneers who actually encountered the mentioned entity back, these are actually real things. It wasn't just made up. So these were actually real logs from people they actually talked to. So, and Alcorn, who fluently reads and translates from French passage written by French Peace, refers to it, but what's cool about the guy who plays Alcorn, William Smith, he is fluent in Russian, French, German, and Serbo-Croatian, as well as English. Yeah, he used to be in the Air Force. He was an intelligence specialist. So then they're bringing someone like him in, they give it like a little authenticity, a little bit, like, you know, I thought that was kind of cool. That someone who actually knows what they're how to translate stuff, not just someone just like making up fake words.
Right. No, and they do try to honor that somewhat, and at least there's some mild set of standards when it comes to these seemingly unknown types of spirits and things like that are out there that they decided to weave into the story here. I will agree with you on that totally.
So my final thoughts is I enjoyed this show, and I enjoyed this episode, and I'm looking forward to the next ones.
Yeah, you got to give it a little more credit than last week's episode, where
Bogeyman.
we felt a little thrown off by the monster, even though it seemed to have some sort of origin that they were translating. No, they made up their own. But this one, it seems like there was at least some tying down to it. I enjoyed it more than last week. I do have to say, last week I don't know. I just didn't care for it as much. But this kind of fixed that feeling. And I am excited to keep going.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 1, Episode 10 of Kolchak, the Energy Eater. And it's, spoiler alert, it's not something you end up seeing, and it's got some pretty lame effects, but it's actually it is enjoyable enough. It's got a very detective-y feel to it, and it's got a little bit of a subdued tone to it, which is a little different than most Kolchak episodes, but you know, as long as him and Vincenzo aren't going to DEFCON 5 or whatever like that, I prefer those particular episodes myself, as opposed to when they sit there and really lay each other out on it. Yeah, check it out. And all eyes on the nurse in this one here too. For RDV, for the Night Talker here at the Xtreme Move Show, I'm your host Rob. Check out what we have for Kolchak, Twin Peaks. Well, of course, we've been reviewing Resident Alien 2 as the episodes are dropping. Check those out. Those are really popular as well. Bunch more stuff. If you have anything you'd like us to take a look at, let us know. Everybody here, have a good night. As always, stay extreme.